All right, everybody, back. Another Tell Me You're Joking time. It is summertime in St. Louis, so as you all well know that are listening here in the 314/618/636 area location, you are officially melting your face off. Congratulations, you live in the Midwest. Really looking forward to today's conversation. We're going to be talking all things St. Louis, money, Viz girls, and beyond. You're going to be astounded. I don't know what direction it's going to go. You know me. I have very few bullet points with one word bullet points, and then we're going to grow from there. But you also know that I love music, and in honor of my guest today, kind of grew up his formative years down in the Lone Star State, in the Austin neighborhoods, playing a little spoon. Austin boys, true story. Back in the Gaslight Studio days, actually it was the last year of Lou Fest, and those of you that are locals, you know what I'm talking about. Our beloved music festival that is no more. Arguably the coolest music festival name in St. Louis, and someday somebody's going to buy that back and do it right. But in 2017, last year that it pulled off, there was a Chuck Berry tribute in which super huge bands, all of them were playing the festival, happened to wander into Gaslight Studio, my old abode, and ran 3 days worth of rehearsals for this Chuck Berry tribute. Those bands included Cage the Elephant, Pokey Lafarge, Captain Kirk from The Roots, Spoon, Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, and on and on and on. We just had a party. So that's my Spoon story, and we brought the crew in and had a little time with them in an intimate environment. So I'm a Spoon fan. I like the music a lot. I liked the music prior to meeting them, so now I like it a little bit more. And without further ado, I'm going to bring on my Austin guy here. Joining me, as I mentioned, from Austin, originally from Chicago. He's got Chicago roots via his parents down to Austin. And as I alluded to, the Viz reference, like so many others from all over this country, when they meet that St. Louis girl, they end up landing in St. Louis. Mr. Alex Fabry, thanks for joining, man.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Spoon, let's just start with the heavy-hitting question. So were you a Spoon fan as a kid growing up, or were you more in the West Texas country scene or other?
I would say neither, actually. Ooh. I was more of a student of hip-hop and rap.
Oh, that totally makes sense in Austin.
But yeah, obviously I liked a lot of the St. Louis artists. Obviously the Nelly and the Chingy were, I don't know if I call them formidable, but they were artists. And I like the Chuck Berry reference because I'm a huge Back to the Future fan, and that's obviously a seminal moment. Now Chuck's a little problematic in certain spots, but so is...
Who isn't these days?
I mean, you got Ike Turner, and Tina Turner from it as well. But I didn't know Michael McDonald is from St. Louis, Miles Davis, SZA, who's even, pretty contemporary. But there's a bigger sort of footprint in music than I ever realized.
Well, I mean, that is just you're jumping right into the theme because we're going to talk about that. St. Louis and its assets, that's one of them that most people have no idea. When they think of St. Louis, they do. Nelly's the easy one. But Nelly caught lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, he did.
The timing, I would argue, the Nelly, he would have been a successful rapper, but he wouldn't have been a global superstar if it weren't for the greatest show on turf. Yep. So without the Rams and the overlap of them doing, Kurt Warner and crew doing what they did, that's my theory. Now, a lot of St. Louisans are going to listen to this and be like, oh, no, they're independent. Nope. That's not how pop culture works. Because in the NFL, they loved Nelly at that time.
I mean, who doesn't love Nelly? Those songs are timeless. Doesn't matter what country or what city you're from. But I would say it was Mark McGuire, then into the greatest show on turf. Because I knew St. Louis because he was going head-to-head with Sammy Sosa back in the day. And, from Chicago a little bit, so that was always the thing. But I knew nothing about St. Louis other than that we had great music and great sports coming out. So no
Now,
reason we can't have that again, you know?
so let's put a little bit of a pin in the map before we start getting into private equity in St. Louis and investing and everything else. You mentioned to me pre-mic or pre-red light, I should say, and you kind of just alluded to it. You know, growing up in Chicago up to a point, and then Austin was home. Give me time frames. Give me a little bit of the road trip that is Alex to St. Louis.
Yeah, for sure. So I just had my 35th birthday about a month ago. So 35 years on this earth. Started in 1990. My mom was pregnant. I was the third, the youngest in my family. They were actually waiting for me to be born to move to Boulder, Colorado. So I was what was standing in the way from then moving. My dad was in the software industry. He had gotten a job in Boulder. We were waiting to move away. So I was born in June. Then 6 weeks later, I moved on to Boulder. So I never actually, until I was way older, actually lived in Chicago whatsoever.
So tough. I mean, this is one of those things. It's a Chicago question. Is it Chicago proper or is it burbs?
It's the burbs. It's what they call the North Shore. And I don't mean to sound pretentious with that, but it was...
Evanston, above Evanston. Where were we?
Wilmette is where they're from. Both my parents are from there. I later lived in Evanston when I went to grad school. But I still have some family up there. And I don't know, it's just a beautiful area. Chicago's a great city, very urban, but there actually is some good sprawl up there.
Did you ever meet John Cusack walking around?
I never met John Cusack. You know who I did see was Michael Wilbon one time. The
the
TI
sports.
guy.
Yeah.
He was like bent over. I don't know what you mean, but like he looks great on TV, but he definitely was sort of struggling physically a little bit when I saw him.
That's what the
campus.
production team is for.
Yeah,
Clean that shit up.
but yeah.
So you routed through Colorado. What brought you guys or you individually to Tejas?
Yeah, so we lived in Boulder for like a year and a half. My dad was in sales in the software industry. So then we did the classic stop in Palo Alto, lived in Los Altos. Actually, I think the funnest fact I can give here is my dad interviewed with Steve Jobs for the next sales job. This was before Apple. Yeah. He turned it down because he thought Steve Jobs was a jerk. I've for years never understood that, like what Dad would think where life would be if you had taken this job. But he was like, Steve didn't listen to anybody, and it's very difficult to be a head of sales if your boss doesn't listen to anybody.
Yeah, but he's Steve Jobs.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, that'd be like telling Mark Cuban, what to do with his tech company. Same thing.
Yeah, Steve always had that reality distortion field, which on the St. Louis, we may need that here a little bit, but that can be hard if reality hits harder, Yeah.
Texas. You landed in Texas.
So, I don't know, he works on startups or growth stage companies in California, then moves down to Austin, which this was 1995. Austin was not what it is today, but it was very much a big part of the tech bubble.
Well, that's in the early stages of keep Austin weird, kind of like what Portland went through. That's in the baby stages of, before Austin jumped the shark. Correct?
Yes, exactly. It was actually, there had been like a bubble in Austin like a few years earlier. So our neighborhood was actually like kind of abandoned. It was a developer who tried to do something and then couldn't get the money. Okay. So you could get things, especially coming from California, pretty affordable. So we lived on the north side, almost as north as you could be in Austin and still be in the city of Austin. So pretty suburban kind of life.
Texas Tech undergrad?
I did, yeah.
So you grew up in Texas, and then you spent your undergrad years there. Early interest, Texas Tech. What's your degree in? What are you doing there? Because you ended up going to Northwestern for your MBA, correct?
Yep. So we were kind of talking about it off camera. My first interest was being a rapper. I wanted to be. Sense. I started a record label. I registered with ASCAP. We did some concerts. This was my freshman year, 2008. 2009, the full backdrop of the financial crisis. I had no clue what that was going on. I was kind of like a Kennedy in the Great Depression or something. And so I, went full speed on this for about a year. And I don't know, I kind of got burned out. I never had a good partner. I'm not really like a fluent white kid. What can I really rap about? I didn't, grow up in the the hood or
the rough
anything.
Streets of Palo Alto.
So, yeah, the rough streets of Palo Alto, rough streets of Austin.
Right. Or the North Shore.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm sure there's a market, but even soccer moms would be like, you're a sellout.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, North Shore, my mom grew up in that and went to private school and the country club thing and like just hated it. And for us, it was about like, we're going to live normal. We're going to be modest. Like, honestly, a lot of what I feel in St. Louis about sort of the understated luxury a bit. So that was what I was raised with. So it didn't feel like, I don't know, just felt normal. I didn't see anything weird with it.
I mean, you're naming areas, metropolitan areas in particular, really business tech areas that are kind of pinnacles within that particular industry. Yeah, I mean, Chicago always has it. It's not necessarily what it's known for, but Chicago's so big, you can do really, really well in tech. Boulder, kind of that Colorado scene was frontier. Obviously, Palo Alto and California in general, that's the epicenter. Austin was an offshoot of, largely due to UT and its favorable tax status. I mean, let's call it two things. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Well, we can debate as to whether or not it is still working there, just kind of given the scale and growth.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of numbers that prove that reverse migration is occurring, and alluding to what we were talking about St. Louis earlier, where sometimes population decline is not a bad thing, and I think that's what's happening in this kind of rubber band effect between the coast and places like Austin. Mm-hmm. And we can debate that later.
Yeah, well, just real quickly on that, like I don't think I would ever want to live in Austin again. Because it's not the Austin I grew up in. Mm-hmm. Like we're there this weekend visiting family, and you fly in, you see the skyline. I don't even recognize it. Like it just looks like a random, association of Meta buildings and all these other brands that aren't Austin. It's not weird. It's a lot more normal than it should be.
No, it's the same architect. It's the same, bougie chains. It's. I'm with you. I feel the same way about Nashville. I remember going to Nashville. College age, late 90s, early 2000s, and feeling that it was, and I wasn't even really a country music fan, but I was a music fan, and I knew that Nashville was it, from an industry perspective, and it just had a vibe. And whether or not you liked country music or Merle or any of the old stuff at all, you did like going into Tootsie's and some of those joints pre-Kid Rock days, right? And Nashville's going down that trajectory now where, forget about what you think about its culture, et cetera. The bigger issue is who can afford it. Whenever you're looking at this next gen of movers coming in, Austin is in the exact same boat, So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, live music capital of the world. And just on the Nashville point, I was just having coffee with someone this morning talking about this, and people say Nashville has this culture and the music and Broadway, and what we were saying is like it has a drinking street. The music industry is somewhat there, not really. Like Austin, live musical capital of the world, like it still has that, but it's not the same. Like it's not the culture like it was.
Well, Austin, it's funny because I talk to a lot of people that are in those two cities, those two being Nashville and Austin. Austin is kind of a getaway for semi-successful acts that don't want to be associated with Nashville. That's the largest draw up to Austin's, quote, music scene is kind of anti-Nashville. It's not pro-Austin because Austin in and of itself, as you just pointed out, it's not the same. Because that starving artist or that starving creative that has an opportunity to network and engage and embed, well, you better have a really good part-time job. Otherwise, it's not happening. So it's kind of one of those things. That's where cities like that are kind of off the radar, Tulsa or an Omaha, and everybody's like, what? Well, just go walk down the back streets there. It's kind of pretty cool. Now, will it ever scale? Who knows, right? But so undergrad, Texas Tech,
Yep.
What was your degree in?
So degree was in finance. Personally, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I actually almost got in the oil business because that was the highest paying job. And then I sort of woke up in the morning. It was like, I don't want to work in oil for the rest of my life. And at that point, it was like, $100 a barrel. So I said, finance will give me options. Like I'm good at math. I like numbers. Like, let's try that.
And the return trip to Chicagoland landed you at Northwestern for your MBA?
Yeah. So
was that always in the cards? Was that kind of like a dream, or was that your parents' dream, given they grew up there?
No, I mean, even when I was a kid growing up, we visited Chicago quite a bit. We'd go to Northwestern's campus. And I remember my mom telling me, she's like, this is very expensive. Like, you will never go here, was sort of the party line for undergrad. And I'm glad I didn't go there for undergrad. But so I graduated from Texas Tech, take a job in corporate finance at a software company in Dallas. And that company also happened to be private equity owned at the time. And that was like how I entered this basically a 12-year odyssey into private equity, and partially which gets me gets me here. So did that for 3.5 years, went to another software company that was private equity owned, sold that company. And that got me to 2018, at which point I did get into Northwestern, because I never wanted to go back to school. Like, it was never something I wanted to do. It was the CFO at my first job. We were both in the same fraternity. He took me out to lunch and he was like, "Where do you want to go to business school?" And I was like, "I got to go back to school. Like, what do you mean?" And that was in 2013, which sort of put me on a path that technically I'm executing still today.
Okay, so sitting at 35 years of age, you're neck deep within the industry, going back to that particular moment, that conversation, knowing what you know now and kind of looking at the landscape, because I too was in finance. I never went to grad school because within the pathway that I was on, you didn't need it. You get your series licenses, and especially if you're on the business development side or you're growing a portfolio. Look, if you're bringing in clients, the MBAs is literally just letters. Yeah. When you look back at it, was that the right decision?
Well, part of it's tough because I'll never know the different decision, but
sure.
And you absolutely, today even more so, do not need an MBA to succeed anywhere in life. It can be helpful for some people, but it's a risk. Like, it's a trade-off of time and money. And for me, I think it was the right one, mostly because in the same conversation, he's saying, "Oh yeah, you go get your MBA, then you work at," and in this conversation, it was Harvard. You go to Harvard Business School, then you go work at McKinsey, and then you work at Goldman Sachs, and then private equity. And I was like, "What's McKinsey? I barely know what Goldman Sachs is. Like, what's private equity?"
Yeah.
Like, that's where I was. Like, this wasn't something that was planned at all. It was sort of like, all right, now I got a goal, get into one of these top 7 schools. And I kind of chased that. And the first time I didn't even get in. I applied to 4 different schools, got denied by all of them in 2016. And that was, for me, like, I haven't failed that much in life. I also haven't taken that many risks. That might be part of the issue, but like, that was a real blow for me of being like, I'm not good enough for your schools. And looking back, I probably wasn't. I didn't have a great application. I didn't do all these things. I wasn't ready. By 2018, I was ready, but that was a real seminal moment for me. And I think I definitely wouldn't be sitting here without that, because I met my wife at Northwestern, who got me to St. Louis. So,
well, when you think about an MBA in general, obviously Northwestern MBA is a big deal. That's a top 10, top 20 school in the nation when it comes to the business school, et cetera. But when you look at how fast industry is changing, specifically in the finance/PE world, and kind of the 1% is getting smaller, and they're gaining a larger percentage of access, right? Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of teenagers listening to the show, but for the one that might be, because they're stuck in the car with their parents, an MBA moving forward, what do you view as its value, knowing what you know now, specifically as it applies to the world of finance and acquisition and equity and development and investments?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with an MBA and really any school program, even undergrad, is you have to know why you're going and what you're going to get out of it. For me, it was, I want to go there and get into management consulting, ideally McKinsey, Bain, or BCG. That was the goal. I was lucky and got into one of those, but if I hadn't, or not gotten a different job, like, it may not have been worth it. It was really about that. I think the thing about the MBA that people get hung up on is there's a million schools you can go to, and I would say 99% of them probably aren't worth it. Like, outside of the top 20. It is tough. Like, luckily Kellogg's been up to even number 1 on some of the rankings. Like, so I joined them when they were number 6. Like, I didn't know that. Like, honestly, they were the only ones that let me in. So yeah. that's the funny part about it. But a lot of the ones, these for-profit schools, that's not going to be worth it for anybody.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
No, and at the end of the day, does the degree matter? I would argue no. Does the degree and the corresponding Rolodex matter? Yes, because it is about the alumni. It is about who you can call, because once you do get a degree from there, your name is on a list of all the other people that did the same thing. And the vast majority of individuals coming out of Kellogg, they're power players. That's just kind of that's.
Yeah, I laugh because that's the appearance when a lot of us are just totally messed up and like are
Well, I should have put quotes around power players. It gets the conversation.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's when that tag is on there, the phone is picked up more times than it is not.
I completely agree
So
with that.
okay, so kind of like skimming through. You were BCG for a little bit. You had the experience at the firm that was sold Sabre. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I worked at Sabre and Active Network, which were portfolio companies of private equity firms. That was before Kellogg. And then after Kellogg, I went to Charles Bank, which is a middle market firm in Boston.
Okay, dumb it down. It's a 3-story building and you're in the elevator. What did you do? I'm not getting into what do you do. What did you do during those years that you could describe as your quote work?
Got it. I'll talk more about the contemporary, and it might be worth it just sort of 10 seconds on private equity and what it means.
3-story building, because we got short attention spans listening.
I won't go very far. It is the idea of buying a company, taking control of it, and how you take control of it is through equity and debt. We won't go into that too much, but
right.
You take control of a company, you make it better, you make it make more money,
then you sell.
And then you sell.
So it's bartering to a degree. It's sales is what it is, right? So therefore, you yourself, did you hyper focus on the financials or the human side of it? Because I believe that's a bifurcation within that world in which you really have individuals, few that are fluid across both, but you have specialists that are the people and the numbers people. Yep. Where would you consider yourself?
So back to my previous analogy, I was in the make it better phase.
Okay.
So I wasn't buying the companies. I wasn't really selling them. I was working with them in the messy middle, those 3 to 5 years where we hold them. Some of it was on financials. I'm just a numbers person by general. Like my favorite book in the world is a 3 statements, income statement, balance sheet, and statement of cash flows, as weird as that sounds. So I was always deep in that, which that's like the scoreboard for a business. And then you bring up the people, like it's 100% the people. It's about what you can organize around and get done. And that's how a company gets better overall.
Okay, let's fast forward. KFA advisory.
Yeah. Well, I think I got to start with a little story of sort of how we got here. So yeah, I'm working at this private equity firm, and my wife, who we talked to, went to Viz. So that's my high school, if I have to say anything. She decided she had worked in consulting at BCG as well, and decided that she wanted to move on and join her family business here in town. So Lindsay is her name. Shout out Lindsay. She joined Kohler Enterprises, which is an injection molded plastic company over in Fenton. So she starts to work for her dad there. And I kind of knew the writing was on the wall. We have to move to St. Louis if she does this. And I totally still today support her for that decision. And so I knew that was coming. So I was getting ready in 2024 to move here. And sort of as I looked at my role and my job and everything I was doing, I wasn't getting as much satisfaction out of it. I was doing cool stuff, but private equity kind of changed. I was working on companies that weren't always doing that well. And, it was pretty grueling work. I traveled 35 weeks a year. I was over in London 6 times in a 10-week period. It wasn't forever. And we wanted to settle down and start a family. We actually are having our first child in September. So that's going to be a big change for us. But I kind of hit the place where I'd kind of gotten out what I wanted to of this job. Like I did some cool stuff, met a lot of good people, but I needed to move on. And so I went to my boss and talked to him about that. And we kind of figured out a plan of I would leave, towards the end of February of 25, just a few months ago. And my focus was find something in St. Louis, find a job in St. Louis. Because I miss going into the office. I was on airplanes all the time. So that was sort of my plan. And, through the end of the year, start looking at things in St. Louis and all these things, get connected with the headhunters, the whole thing. And come Q1 of 25, I'm looking for a job and it's not going very well. Like I'm getting some interviews, but they're not the positions I want. Some were great companies, but two VP roles I couldn't get. They went to other people or something else. So I'm sitting there in April and sort of saying like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be unemployed till June? Like this could be a problem, right? And then we find out we're pregnant. It's like, what should I do here? And that's when, weirdly enough, like this founder of a software company reached out, Y Meadows, which I was at briefly, and offered me a sales job. And so I took that, and within that, that's when it's really how we come into the story. Is I start posting on LinkedIn, not for any reason, just because I thought it would help my brand being in sales, and I just started like writing, doing fun stuff. So I start doing that, and that was actually going pretty well. And I was doing all these stories about myself, and then my wife says, she's like, "Why don't you write something about St. Louis?" She's like, "It's not about you, maybe it'll get better traction."
And you were like, "I love Nelly."
Well, yeah, and I actually had some funny. Nelly was supposed to be in one of those posts. Funny enough, a reference to him. But so I was like, okay, what can I write about in St. Louis? And it was like, well, private equity in St. Louis. And this was all with my AI model, which I use. I'm not shy about saying I use AI quite a bit for a lot of the writing, but it created this article about how it can be the next big hub in private equity. And I actually agreed with a lot of the takes in it about sort of the silver tsunami and a lot of these businesses that are going to change hands and everything. So I was like, sure, okay, let's post this. So I post that in the morning. I think it was June 4th. It was right before my birthday. So I post that, and it just blows up. And I think that might be part of the reason I'm here. And you sort of found me was because of this post. So I'm getting all these people connecting. Like I had a billionaire in St. Louis add me. Like all this stuff is sort of happening, and I'm feeling pretty good. But that was the start of like my personal brand.
Remind me, what was the post? What was
it? Was about St. Louis is the next private equity hub. Move over Chicago and Boston. And it called out 3 firms, Jealous, I think Stiefel, and I'm blanking on the other one.
Do you remember roughly when you put it out, time frame?
I think it was June 4th.
Okay, so about a month ago.
Yeah, about a month ago. But until then, like nothing. I was posting on LinkedIn, getting some engagement from people I knew, but nothing in St. Louis, and nothing was happening. Now, since then, we can talk about this. It's been insane in a lot of cool ways. But yeah, so I do that, and then I go to the Cardinals game that night. I got last minute invited to the Cardinals game, and I'm sitting there in the first inning, just to the right of home plate, probably about 12 rows up. Mason Wynn gets up to bat, hits a foul ball, and mind you, I've sat in these seats probably 15 games. I've never seen a foul ball come even close to us. The ball goes straight up over the thing, bounces off the dugout, and goes right to me.
And it was a sign from God.
I'd felt something in that moment. I mean, in a weird way. I'm not overly religious, but pretty spiritual. I would say that was one of those moments of like, man, maybe I did something right. And so I go home, and the next morning I wrote this like editorial about St. Louis, about how it's undervalued and the underdog and all this stuff. And I know I posted it, just felt right, and that one blew up even more. That's been my most engaged post overall.
Okay, so yeah, why did you move here? Quote. That was your quote on that.
Yeah.
And you've got a picture of the baseball, which
I'm holding right now. Yeah.
Is this going to be one of those things that it's like the lucky rabbit's foot that you're now going to take with you everywhere? Theoretically, possibly.
Yeah, I thought about like, what if I lost this baseball? What would I do? And it's more the symbol of it. It's less about the physical ball.
Sure.
And just the like, it was just something like, you're on the right track, Alex. Like that's what I felt in that moment.
Well, let me ask you just kind of therapeutic type of questions for those of us that are from St. Louis, because for you to be an outsider, to go down the road of making posts like that are way more positive forward, ideas driven, that's more than just a freaking bike trail or something like that. What were some of the things that were occurring to you, either in experience, in conversations, or in research, that were starting to trigger this kind of manifestation of the idea that, well, hold on, this, and I know that you mentioned that you use AI to blend some of these ideas and theories, but give me an idea of like 2, 3, 4 things that were like, these were markers that were helping kind of form this idea.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was pretty negative. I was having trouble making friends. I was having trouble getting a job. I was kind of unknown, right? Like I needed that somebody who can vouch for me that I didn't have. So that just made me search of like, I need to do something different. Like, I'm not going to live here forever and not have friends. I'm not going to live here forever and not have work.
Just go play pickleball, and that's what
Well,
2025.
And that my best group of friends is Kirkwood, like the seniors in Kirkwood who play pickleball indoors from 12:30 to 2 every weekday during the winter.
Why am I not surprised?
Like those, like I have better friendships with anyone under the age of 40, with them other than anyone under the age of 40 in a weird way. So that was one piece. But the other thing was I started this business class at the Youth and Family Center on Cass Avenue in April.
Okay.
So that was something I posted weeks before, and it got some traction, but not like a ton. You know, in my head, I was like, oh, there's going to be a news article about this or something. That wasn't why I was doing it. It just was something I always wanted to do. And with AI, I was able to create the curriculum for that incredibly quickly. And so that got me to go to the north side and the east side too. And that, I mean, I still become emotional driving through there. Like it's like in the United States in 2025.
Should
like,
never have a neighborhood like that.
Never. And there's just so much empty space, like let alone where people are living. Like across the street from Youth and Family Center, there's 3 houses that have boards in front of their doors. And these are nice looking houses. Yeah. Like, so, and I know there's reasons it's complicated. I'm not saying it's simple, but that's what hit me too of like this, there's some sad stuff going on. Maybe I could help, you know?
Yeah. So you put these posts out, connect the dots between this aha moment, maybe this epiphany, however you want to word it, and KFA. What is it as it relates to these things that you're experiencing and feeling and writing about?
Yeah. So again, I keep writing just because the ideas kept coming, and using AI, it really was able to capture a lot of that. And so I'm working at this software company, and again, they were the ones who told me to do this. They didn't always like the topics, but you know, I just was like falling less in love with that and more in love with doing something in St. Louis. And that wasn't AI software. You know, that was something community-based or investing, like something I could really lean into. And that's just over the next couple of weeks, I just sort of started thinking more and more like, man, I need to go out on this because I want to post more and more content. I don't want anybody to tell me what I need to do. And they weren't, no negative to them, but it just was not my purpose. And I actually have I have a lot of thoughts on this of people finding their purpose. I think in most cases, people shouldn't follow their purpose until they're like really, really sure about it. But I feel like I found it.
You sound a lot like, one of my favorite guys in the world, period. His pods, his theories, his books, Scott Galloway. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Pivot,
big fan.
Pivot Man, Prof G, right? He talks about what you're alluding to all the time, and that is, you know, because his own net worth is in the hundreds of millions at this point. He's a techie guy, you know, in New York, NYU professor, all this other shit, right? But he always talks about it's one thing to be successful, it's another thing to integrate those in need into the process, you know, and what's the why, right? He talks about that. You're young, you know, I'm assuming you're probably comfortable, but you're not Scott Galloway comfortable.
No.
What is it about the culture, or, you know, what's pulling the empathy out of you? You know, are you self-aware as to why you're empathetic to these neighborhoods, to these people, to these causes, through the lens of kind of historically an isolated industry, that being PE?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a couple things. So first, I grew up playing basketball. That was my sport. I didn't get to the NBA. That was my first sort of missed dream.
Hence the rep love affair.
Yeah, hence the rep. But it also, like, I played on these teams. I would go to East Austin, which is kind of the historic, now it's like totally gentrified, but that was a historically sort of lower income area. I would be, you know, the only white kid on my team. Yeah. So I kind of grew up like integrated, like nobody was any different. It's just like, oh, you're a point guard, you're a center. Like, I don't really even care where you came from. I care about how good your jump shot is. So that was like, I don't know, there's a comfort for me there. I think secondarily, like, I spent the last 12 years focused on myself and focused on businesses and I say this all the time, making rich people richer. And
I know exactly what that means.
Yeah. And that, I mean, I did well doing that. I'm not Scott Galloway, but, you know, I'm comfortable in a lot of ways and on a path, I think, towards, you know, not really worrying about money the same way what 80% of America does, something like that. So I feel this is a good time for me. I mean, the other thing, like, yeah, my wife is in a stable job and like really supports what I'm doing and gave me the freedom. You know, if I tried 10 years ago to go out on my own and do a startup, A, I probably would have failed. But B, like, I really wasn't comfortable enough to take that loss at the time. Now, if I don't get paid for 3 years, like, life's going to go on, and think about how much good I could do with that, like, and I'm not saying that's what I'm trying to do, but
Sure.
And now I look at this background I have of PE and even, working at BCG and some of these other places that there's not as many of us in St. Louis. So that, to me, it feels like an obligation to teach the things I've learned to others, whether that's kids, whether that's other business people. And that's part of what KFA is the consulting firm in some sense of advising businesses, hopefully advising businesses one day that I own, but also today advising any sort of business organization to help them.
So talk a little bit about KFA as far as focus and or strategy as it pertains to the transactional reality of PE, what PE does, or what most people think it does, and you kind of described that earlier. You have a group that buys a company, makes the company better, and then they sell it. I mean, simplistically, that is the vertical, narrative of PE activities. But you're also leaning into kind of this consulting, probably community-based, like, hey, let's think bigger. Let's make money, but let's think bigger. So if one is listening, KFA, like, who's the target? Who are you looking to integrate with? Are you looking for high net worth individuals that are looking to do things, or are you looking at businesses that are looking for change or takeover opportunities, or is it all of the above or none of the above?
Yeah, I think the beauty of it is on some level it's all of the above, and it may not be all of the above today. Mm-hmm. There's some we're going to focus on sooner, and I think with the community things, those are all going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Like, I hope in my lifetime the North Side is a safe place that I can drive through, but might not happen in 5 years. Like, I mean, I hope obviously, but that's one element of it. I think there's just a broader trend going on in America with these transfers of both wealth and companies to a new generation. And that's one that I think is going to be, in 5 years, we're going to be like, why weren't we talking about that more today?
Yeah, you use the term, and what I'd like to do is I'm gonna bring this up, and then we're gonna take a quick break.
Sounds good.
And I've heard it before, but I always forget how much I like it, and that is silver tsunami. And what you're really referring to is kind of this baby boomer generation that has accumulated the vast majority of wealth. Like, at no point in the history of the world has there been a demographic that has accumulated more wealth than the baby boomers are right now. And they are also facing the exit door, right? We're there. And this silver tsunami is a combination of not only them passing away, but you're going to have this transfer of wealth of these businesses, and it's hundreds of thousands of small and mid-sized businesses that do that. $250,000 a year to $100 million a year in business. We're talking small cap companies that make America. That is going to be a massive, massive transfer of wealth. So take a second and give me your thoughts on the role the silver tsunami is going to play in environments. Because St. Louis is, we've got our Fortune 50s, right? We got a few.
Yeah, for sure.
We have private companies like Enterprise, like Worldwide, that are global killers, but we are largely small family businesses that have a lot of wealth. Silver tsunami, as it applies to St. Louis, what's the upside? What's the downside, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I joke with, when I talk to private wealth managers about this, I see two scenarios. There's going to be a lot of boats in lake houses, or there's going to be a lot of business owners that come out of this.
Bingo.
And that to me, that's what I see. Like, people are going to waste this wealth and give it to casinos and give it to, second houses, or they're going to actually put it to work in the community or in a business. That's sort of what I see at the highest level. Is that your target? Do you think, because I too, like, I always look at investment opportunities as to what's the perfect combination of supply and demand, as far as what do we have, right? What do we have? Who would actually want it? And the one thing you're describing, these businesses, they're highly, highly desirable, not only from the kids that are waiting to get it, but there are people all around the world that are going through PE firms, large and small alike, that are looking for a multitude of businesses like that. That could be an embedded natural resource that St. Louis has that it doesn't know how to activate. Yeah. Is that kind of how you look at it? Yeah, and the other trend in there is that private equity has had its heyday. the private equity heyday is over.
Yeah.
This was ZERP and low interest rates and businesses you could, through multiple arbitrage, you could grow and make, a 3x on every deal. These firms are struggling to make 1.5 times or 2 times, and there have been exits. There's a lot of, we could talk for an hour.
Well,
about
I'm a Squawk Box nerd. Those that listen know I'm Squawk Box from 5 a.m. till about 7:30 until my people get up. And this morning there was literally an analyst saying, there's a new trend in private equity that is private forever, in which they're now thinking, you know what, let's not even go public anymore. You, Mr. Small Business Owner, you keep control. Let's just find dividends, and that's bad for the economy. That's bad for the broader population. This is scary shit. Really.
That's the thing. There's so much opportunity today.
Yeah.
We have more opportunity than we've ever had. So,
all right, we're gonna take a quick break. We're
Okay.
gonna roll out of here with a little spoon in honor of my Austin guest. When we come back, we're gonna be dissecting this a little bit. We're gonna do put St. Louis in the lens of this and see what might work, what's a good idea, what's a bad idea, and favorite rappers will be included. So catch you on the flip side. All right, we're back. Quick break is now over. Rolling in honor of my guests' musical taste buds. Rolling in with another rapper from St. Louis. One of my very good friends, actually. His name's Scrub.
nice.
AKA. Well, I should say his name is Adam, AKA Scrub. Scrub and Asa. You should check it out. SCRUB. It just spelled like it sounds, and Asa.
Can you guess who my favorite rapper is?
I mean, the obvious choice, don't take this the wrong way, would be Eminem. But I'm going to go with maybe Nas.
Well, number one, you're exactly right. Of course, it's Eminem. But Nas could be number 2. Like, it was Nas, Biggie,
wow.
Tupac. Like, I was the lyricist. Mobb Deep. I got that Mobb Deep album still in my car.
Yeah, but see, I've got I know exactly how many years I've got on you. It's 14. I'm not quite to that 50 mark. So my hip-hop / rap love affair involved artists that were bands that actually had musicians in their grooves. A little bit of De La Soul, Tribe Called Quest.
Nice.
Kind of the old school stuff. And then, of course, obviously, LL and all the Rick Rubin acolytes.
Of course.
Yeah, St. Louis, it's funny, coming in here playing Scrub, perfect example. Here's a dude, wicked talented. Like, if you take some of his songs, right, you put it in a playlist that is Macklemore and Eminem and all the other quote similar sounding rappers, to the coast, they're going to be like, hell yeah, who's this guy, right? But he's an individual that hasn't left, by choice. And I think it's kind of like symbolic of St. Louis in general. We were talking before the break about the underbelly of St. Louis, and and there are a multitude of success stories, as evidenced by the impending silver tsunami. So let me maybe just start there, and just ask you a question. Brand identity. Now that you've kind of bounced around, you've lived in significantly relevant cities. You've done the work at the macro consulting level. You've got that MBA from Kellogg.
You're never going to give me crap.
No. It's all. Yeah, look, I mean, that's own it. I would. But if now that you've been here for a while, if somebody were to ask you from the coast that knows that you're in this kind of consulting PE world, that you're kicking off a startup and you're in the backyard that we're in, how would you describe the brand that is St. Louis?
I have no idea. I mean, and I don't actually think that's a bad thing. Because I think Dallas is a really good corollary for us. And I lived there for about 10 years. But Dallas's brand, like, it's sort of the $30,000 millionaire, people who live above their means. That's what people would say. It's Dallas, the TV show. It's all these things, but there's not like one thing. It's not the Cowboys. It's not the Mavericks. It's just a great city that really focuses on business and employment. And ultimately, I think that's what every city should be about, is good jobs, and then that builds a good community, and everything falls into place.
So I name dropped Dave Messner earlier, and I'm sure he'll probably be listening if he's not already texting me right now in real time as he's listening to this. We get into friendly debates as to the value prop, the relationship between business policy, strategy, as well as where I lean into is kind of like brand identity, culture, experiences, things that, in the case of Austin, what made Austin weird, made it cool, made it attractive. But then there was this overlay of fiscal policy, tax policy, and things that were happening within Texas as a whole and Austin in particular. Where do you view the give and take or the arm wrestling match that does occur in all cities looking to rebound between culture, community experiences, and business tax policy?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't look to Austin and say, wow, this is a great city with great policy. If you go down there and even towards my parents' house in the north side of Austin, big homeless problem. And their policy has made that a lot worse. Now, that's debatable and it's complicated, but I don't think Austin's got it figured out. If anything, they're I don't want to say the problem in Texas, because there are some problematic legislations in Texas, but the best thing for Texas is no state income tax. Like, that keeps and brings businesses there. And the best thing Texas had going for it was California was making a lot of mistakes. And that's, I believe, what brought a lot of the businesses there. I mean, I just don't like, policy is part of the solution, but businesses, I think, is just the answer. Like, it's all about what the private sector is doing. Like, the public sector usually will try to cater to them, at least what I've seen. And when that works, I don't know. Obviously, I'm simplifying here, but I mean, I guess where is St. Louis maybe getting it right or wrong that the other cities aren't, maybe in your opinion?
Well, I don't think it's getting it right in general, in spite of having a toolbox of a lot of good things that are sellable. Be it, I hate talking about cheap, but let's be, the reality is we have inventory. We have housing inventory that on a per square foot basis that, within communities that are valuable, that's there. That's one. Two, centrally located logistically. If you are in any kind of a macro business and you've got multi-markets, it's, we're 2 hours from everywhere on a plane, right? That does matter.
That's nice. I like that. I've liked that so far.
The other thing is, like, for those that are here and you start to look at the increased desire, specifically post-COVID, of individuals becoming more, maybe not rural permanently, but rural in interest. People like to camp. They like to get out. Well, you can go 1 hour in any direction. You're either in a farm field, or you're on a river, or you're in the the hill. Yeah. So like the natural landscape here is appealing. Fresh water, lakes, rivers, things like that. Those are important. Because you go to Vegas, what are you gonna do? You're gonna stay in Vegas because you're not gonna drive to the burbs. Guess what? You're in the desert, right? There's not more.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But I think the underbelly of St. Louis is similar to Chicago. The city of Chicago it's one of those cities, and everybody thinks that everybody in Chicago is all the same. It's absolutely not. The difference between Lincoln Park to Andersonville to Humboldt Park to the South Side to Pilsen, you name it. These are all mini nations that just happen to be under the construct that is Chicago proper. Mm-hmm. St. Louis has the same thing. Exact same thing. You have Benton Park, you have Soulard, you've got Central West End, and everybody that is within those neighborhoods, when they're asked, where are you from? They don't say St. Louis. They say, well, I live in Tower Grove, right? So I think there's things like that are going on, and we do have a laundry list of mega companies, large and mid-size, in which, look, if you want a job, you can get a job. Might not be the perfect job, might not be the job you're dreaming of, but you can go to work for a Worldwide. You can go to work for Enterprise Holdings. There are those things that happen here.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on the point, to connect those 2 points at the end, so on the cheap point, you can get a $600,000 house in Webster, or maybe in Kirkwood, sort of like some other areas. You can find the affordable housing that isn't in some of these other cities like Austin.
Well, when I say affordable housing, I'm going to...
Or are you going down like 300, 400.
Yeah, I mean, you can go down to Shaw neighborhood, and if you look down the right block, you can find something for 250 to 350. You know, maybe you do put 50, 75 into it, but you're sub 500 for 3,500 square foot, 4-bed, 3-bath, beautiful red brick or yellow. You know, and you're in a neighborhood. You know,
I agree. Yeah. So shifting down. So great. You know, under 500,000. If you can't get a job that is paying you the same way, and you know, in Dallas you can get one for you're making $200,000. Your house costs $900,000. Like that's a better trade for most people in a lot of cases. And I think that's where we need to focus on St. Louis. It's the job, stupid. Like it's the economy, stupid. You know, quoting whoever. Is that Bill Clinton or somebody?
No, that's Carvel.
Carvel.
It's the economy, stupid. Yeah.
But like that's to me. I think the biggest. I don't want to shift too much, but like in some of the poorer areas here, we have young men who are sitting around at 40 to 50 to 60% unemployment, and of course they turn to things that make a lot of money, like you know drug dealing and some other things. Like they're not like so. I think that's the key to solving all this.
What is it? Aristotle, right? Poverty is the mother of all crime, or the father of all crime. That's the quote, and that is the lived experience.
Yeah, and to the call it the aristocracy of St. Louis, like that should bother us every single day. I'm not saying I'm in that, but like that there is poverty going on 10 miles away from you.
Yeah.
And maybe everybody's just gotten used to it. I don't know. But like been here like 10 months, like I'm not used to it. I think things are going to take me a while to get used to that and just accept that. And I think that's why I sort of speak up and do some of the writing on LinkedIn. But I just also think like we're missing the boat on what the identity of St. Louis should be, because all the things you mentioned will be secondary to a place you can make money and raise a family. Like I personally think raising a family, having a family, that's coming back. That's going to be more popular than it is today.
Yeah, one of the things that Dave leans into, and I tend to agree with, is you know when we think about branding or selling St. Louis as an opportunity for a transplant, you know, we tend to try to take that family of 4 or that new young entrepreneur and put them in a singular bubble and say, oh, here's St. Louis as the whole. And I don't think that's correct. I think, for example, he's like, well, we really need to market the burbs to families and single, you know, new employees to the city. You know, and of course there'd be some fluidity between the two, where there might be a young family that's just like, we're super urban, we got to be in the city. You know, that's realistically that's going to be the exception to the rule. But
yeah,
kind of dissecting the town or the area into these you know well-to-do fiefdoms for what they are.
Yeah.
Do you see it that way? In your roughly 10 months here, that's kind of how the area's chopped up.
100%. And I live in Kirkwood. I'm in a bubble. I don't see any of the problems that are in St. Louis. To me, if I just stay in my, 10 square miles, or maybe it's less than that, I don't know. It is a perfect life. And why should I leave? Why should I care about anything else in the city? Right? I mean, I think that's, maybe they don't think that explicitly, but I think a lot of people are going through that in their head.
Well, this is one of the things that I always think about along the lines of this particular topic. You have the insight of your wife who grew up here, who knows Kirkwood, right? If you didn't, and you had met another young lady at Northwestern and decided, St. Louis, there's a draw, you're not saying, you know what, I heard Baldwin is really cool. That's just not rolling off the tongue, right?
But it should. Baldwin is pretty cool. You don't like Baldwin?
Is it though? No.
Where are you? Maybe that's a question to you. Like, where would you live in the western part of St. Louis?
Well, I live in Webster.
Okay.
And one of the reasons I moved to Webster after was in Chicago. Loved the city. Loved the whole train. That was my vibe. Ready for kids. We wanted to slow down, come back. We weren't going to go back to the hometown. Lived South City. Then we had our child. And my wife was like, okay, enough, no more 2 stories. I'm not carrying this thing, up and down all the time. And we landed on Webster. And the reason was Webster most closely correlated to another area of Chicago that we loved where some of our friends lived, and that being Oak Park.
Oh, yeah. Great city. Where
you're a burb, but technically you have a lot of kind of urban influence. Universities, you're 8 minutes from the Arch, right? 10 minutes from the Arch, whatever. You're still like, you're relevant. And we joked about just not going beyond 270.
Got it, yeah.
That's the circle. You can't go west. And and so for me, the older I get, though, I tend to want to be that rural guy. I'll go another 20 miles out, get a little more space. I don't want to see neighbors. It's just, that's that anti-human thing that occurs once you get older.
Yeah, I see that, yeah.
But for you, you're about to have your first. When you do look at the area, are you drawn to the confined, controllable landscape that is Kirkwood? Does the rest of the area appeal to you? Your own personal, your quote day job that you're kind of working through this this new endeavor. You've alluded to dealing with North City and at least addressing it.
For sure.
Where do you see yourself? 6 months, 12 months, 2 years down the road. Where's your focus going to be from a regional perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and one every day the answer gets clearer, and I don't think I have the full answer now, but I'll give you sort of the opinions on that. So my biggest thing when I said I was moving to St. Louis, and I told my in-laws this who helped us find our house, it's like, I want our kids to go to the public schools. And I said that in part because my mom is a big public school person. She is vehemently against school vouchers, which is a big issue in Texas. And I don't know, she's raised me my whole life of go to public schools. And I picked that up because that's contrarian here. Like I said, my wife went to Viz, all these public school or private schools. So that's how I got to Kirkwood. And now don't want to piss off people in Kirkwood, but it's a little bit the People's Republic of Kirkwood. That's what I refer to it as. Yeah, it's a great community, but it's a little, for me, it's a little maybe farther left than I am comfortable being.
Well, a little bit of that. It's also a lot of NIMBY. They like
100%, yeah.
They like to be arts and culture as long as it doesn't include poor people in new construction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that. And Webster's really no different. And I think that's kind of this, we've mentioned it a few times now, that silver tsunami. One of the biggest issues that is occurring in communities like that is kind of the entrenchment that is the baby boomers when it comes to good communities and housing. There's just not enough houses. For 25 to 35-year-olds, even push it up a little bit. If somebody doesn't have the means or the assistance from their parents or other, there's a ton of communities like Kirkwood, like Webster, that are just not achievable. They can't do it because that median house price is just skyrocketing. Yeah, and it's a whole bunch of couples that are empty nesters living in 3,500 square foot houses with 5 beds, 3 baths, and they eat, drink, watch TV in one room. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So let me just ask you a theoretical question. You get a little bit of the keys to the car, be it the Rams money or close a couple macro deals, and you can start to move some needles. If you were to start to address regionally, creating value, creating an attraction, what are you selling? What are you doing? What's your first step?
So the first thing, and this is a hot take, is I'm not selling it to anybody outside of St. Louis. Because if you want to move here, you can move here, but I'm not going to try to sell you on this place. This place has too many great things going on for me to try to sell you. What I want to do is sell the people here. And I want to get us on a plan to look at the haves should help the have-nots. And that is going on to some extent, but it can go on more and in different ways. And for me, it's teaching. I have business expertise. I want to teach that to other people. I want to maybe one day do a vocational center or something to bring jobs. Again, me, it's jobs. Get labor force participation up and get unemployment down. And honestly, unemployment probably historically always should be at 3 to 5%. And that's kind of where it is. But that's not the whole story because people just aren't working or we're not measuring it. They don't pay taxes, all these things.
Well, the unemployment rate is not, we look at it as a number that is just slapped over the top of the region as a whole. But when you get into the weeds of the regions and the tracks, so to speak, it is not. It's not equally distributed. Yeah. The delta is great.
And I completely agree with you on that. And I think one thing, so I said I'm not selling to anybody. I am, but what we need to do is make this community so great and so awesome that we don't have to sell. People are coming here because of the opportunity they can see. And it's been so interesting, posting on LinkedIn and all this stuff. And I've had multiple consulting engagements come out of me posting and people reaching out. I didn't sell them on anything. Mm-hmm. It was because I just was real and talking. Like, they wanted something from me. Like, I almost think that's a metaphor for St. Louis. Like, if we just focus on ourselves and be comfortable in our own skin, that we don't need anybody else. Because frankly, I don't think we do. We need probably better policy. We need better projects. We need people to stop kind of mailing it in and start helping people on the side. Like,
it's so funny that you put it that way. And I'll be honest, you're the first person that I've talked to in any of these conversations that has led with, I'm not really interested in outsiders. I'm interested in rising up those from within. Because, and I've said this, forms of this argument for years, corporate America. Specifically, publicly traded companies. Mm-hmm. You can go to any of them, right? When you look at that human analysis, the Jack Welches of the world, when they look at a company or they come in and consult, what do they always focus on? They don't, a little bit of tweaking at the top, but they're hyper-focusing on the bottom third of the workforce, whether it's via production, management, HR, whatever it is, right? Because they know that if you can improve the poorest or the lowest performing segment within your institution, that bubbles up quicker than altruism from the top trickling down, right?
Yeah, the Reaganomics, the trickle down.
And that's kind of what you seem to be describing here in theory is like, we've got a population. You're not super concerned with trying to grow the population, maybe maintain it, maybe stop the bleeding by hyper-focusing on how can we rise the tide within our, our backyard pool, right? We're not trying to raise the ocean. Let's just make the pool level higher. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, and I want to go back to your Jack Welch comment because I think history's treated him way nicer than they should. His whole thing was fire the bottom 15%. And GE, I lose a lot of friends saying this, but like their whole run was
timing and luck.
Not fraudulent. There was a little bit of fraud, but like it was more like not good business. Like the principles of GE are some of the ones that private equity ran on and were successful, but it was a facade. And again, I've worked for a former CEO of GE, so I could lose friends with that statement, but I don't look at those guys as heroes. I look at them as like the people that destroyed the U.S. corporation.
Well, it's also Jack et al. That during their dominance, their control over the markets is also in tandem with, excuse me, Reaganomics in particular. We started to see the acceleration of the wage gap, where you look at these companies, like the Jack Welch, start off with cutting. I was talking more along the lines of that Six Sigma approach, where you work with everybody. These are critical employees. You need to make them better, right? So you invest a lot of time and money in critical employees that are at the lower end of the ladder, so that your ladder grows faster. Yeah,
and I agree with you, but a lot of what GE was doing, it was just getting rid of those people, which created the layoff and like not created the layoff, but grew it.
No, I'm not GE specifically. Just that mentality, but they've accelerated the gross wage gap nationally.
Yep.
Right.
And executive comp too went way up, way more than it should have.
Well, I mean, the number continues to alter, frankly, on the upside. In 64, I believe the ratio is 22-1. Average labor quote employee at said company was 22. The CEO pay was 22 times the average. Mm-hmm. We're now in excess of 375 times.
It's great to be a CEO.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of getting to the point where everybody's like, I don't even know who to hate anymore. So there's that. But I want to go back to what you were saying, the hyper focus on what we have within. Mm-hmm. Give me an idea of what that conversation looks like. I'm hypothetical. STL company. I do $15 million a year in revenue. I've got 25 employees, whatever that math is, and I want to kind of utilize, maybe I'm up for sale, maybe I'm looking to acquire, maybe I'm looking to grow. Yeah. But if you come across my desk and you're sitting there, where does your philosophy or your belief, as far as like, here's what we're going to focus on from a regional standpoint, apply that to a singular business? What does that look like?
Yeah. And I think just what I would broadly tell all business owners and really all high net worth individuals in St. Louis is you should be investing 15% of your net worth in this community. If everybody did that.
Well, let me be devil's advocate. Why would I do that?
Because your house is going to be worth more. Your kids are going to be better off. We're going to want to live here. 70% of people here grew up here. They're from here. That's why I don't want outsiders, because that's hard to grow. I just need those people to make more families and stay here.
Okay, so
I want to ask you a question.
I'm going to be that town and country guy.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm going to say. Well, my house is already worth $2.5 million, and my kids are set for life.
Well, they're not set for life, because if they don't have purpose in a job, they're going to be washed up. They're going to be alcoholics or drug addicts or not be living. Sorry, that's a little bit heavy, but like they're not going to live their life as well as they can. And if we don't make a better community here with more businesses, and that's the silver tsunami worry is these kids just like piss away this money. Like it really, I've talked to a lot of high net and ultra high net worth people that are like very concerned about that, to the point where they're like, don't even tell their kids they have any amount of money. And they have literally like life-changing, don't need to work money.
Yeah.
I don't know, I find that interesting. But to your question, so and this is part of what I'm doing today is trying to understand the landscape of businesses in St. Louis and Missouri. But St. Louis is the best. Like it has 3 times the GDP of Kansas City. Like it's a lot bigger. And I think the pitch there is like, do you care about this community? And if the answer is no, then you're not one I want to talk to. If the answer is yes, well, okay, so what do we need to do here? Like we have some major problems that are holding people back from thriving here in general, like obviously people in poverty, but also like the people affected by poverty. Like the fact that I was in Central West End last week at one of the business incubators. The security was so high. To leave, I had to literally jump a fence. Like I couldn't figure out how to get out. I had to jump over the fence from inside. Mm-hmm. Now I asked myself, why was that needed? That was needed because they're worried about somebody letting someone in who's going to steal. So that's why it's hard to get out. Like we need to be in a community where that's not the number one worry. Like, and I know that's easier said than done, but like we have to figure out this crime thing. And I think it starts with the jobs. It starts with people working. And like there's 60% of the 40% of the workforce is not working right now.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little
bit.
Who's more insufferable when it comes to trying to apply this type of change/ideology? Is it the insulated wealthy that are, the NIMBYs, so to speak, or is it kind of progressive idealists that, that's not good enough? It's never good enough in spite of a new concrete plant that is, 100 jobs. Because I view both of them equally insufferable and extremely hard to penetrate.
Well, and the criticism on me, like, who are you? You're this kid from Kirkwood, grew up upper middle class. Like, you don't know struggle. You don't know. I've had people say, like, you've never failed in your whole life, have you? And I'm like, you have no clue. But they both have to be part of the solution, but the people suffering have to be the exact focus. Like we need those people to also be like, I need to take a step up out now. And then we need those other groups to help give them the hand. And what I mean by that, like that starts with jobs, that starts with housing that's not falling apart. That starts with like obviously police. It really involves actually police.
No, I agree with you because the domino effect is okay. So if you get a tranche of say 100 businesses that start to do that have goods and services that they're selling not only in the St. Louis metropolitan area but nationally, maybe even internationally, right? If you have an environment that is more appealing, well then the natural draw for transplants, new employees, all of that gets easier.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't know, I haven't seen anything resonate to kind of trigger that aha moment where we do have all these natural resources that we alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
Communities, school districts, et cetera. It's not clicking,
Yeah.
And granted, you've only been here 10 months, but what's one of the reasons that you would say like, hey, here's a really obvious one. This is a problem.
Well, this is part of why I'm optimistic, because what you said, like the way we've always done it is not going to work. Right. Like if it was going to get solved, there were a lot of people with idealistic mindsets like mine that would have solved this. So what went wrong? And I don't know, and I could spend a whole lifetime doing academic research on what went wrong. People have for the last 100 years or so, the white flight, everything.
Yeah.
But what I see is the true democratizer is AI. Because we have at our fingertips, and everybody with a phone, and even the poorest of people, not everybody, but a lot of them have phones. They have access to the same tools that I do on 3 devices at home. Like, you can get to information, you can get to learning, you can make training. There's all these things that can be done. From I call it workforce sort of enablement or retraining, because I think that's the next era we're in. Like, people say AI is going to kill jobs. Totally false. It's going to change jobs, and new jobs are going to be needed for different things.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. I have a property that's been a 1031, right? It's been an exchange. And this is anecdotal, but I want to get your take on what I experienced. I basically went to ChatGPT, just the free one. I said, "Hey, Chat, I have a property. Cost basis is X. I'm going to sell it for Y. Here's my spread. This is my current tax rate. I'm considering putting the difference after taxes into the market. Please provide me a cost comparison over 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, in which my new property bought at this rate, this interest rate on the note, and appreciates at X% a year versus S&P at 9.5% over the next 5 years.
Be more like 8, but yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, though, yeah.
I put it in, and boom. Like, in the span of 10 seconds, that question, which is a pretty deep question, and historically, to get that answered accurately, you would have to call a CPA and then get your financial planner on the line, because those two don't do the same thing, right? 9 times out of 10. And you're gonna be presenting it. You're gonna be going back and forth, and then you're gonna get an answer that probably is pretty close to what ChatGPT, kicked out. Only a week after that, in the mail, you're gonna get a bill for their time.
Oh yeah, $800, whatever it took them to calculate that, right?
Exactly. So when you hear things like that, and you think of businesses, and you think of this, like, how do we grow? How do you help them grow? How do you help kind of the next ring, their immediate community and maybe the broader community? Where's AI in that process for you?
I mean, I use AI 4 to 5 hours a day, every single day. It's changed everything for me. So back in 2023, I might have mentioned this, I was traveling a lot to London, and that was right when ChatGPT dropped and everyone was freaking out. Little did we know we wouldn't actually make that much progress for 2 years. But I had dinner with a guy who was the COO of the company, and he was telling me just all this crazy stuff he was doing with AI. Like, it was doing all his work. It was insane. And I was like, he must be wrong, and was skeptical. But then I started using it, and the only limits on AI are my imagination. And that's what's crazy to me. And you can use it, for your analysis you're talking about. I know people, it's like their best friend. Especially in the baby boomer generation. They call it chat. Say, hey, chat, I asked chat. It's like literally talking like a friend.
Yeah.
And some people are scared by that. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, they have a friend they don't have to pay for. And,
Yeah.
So there's so much. I can't even tell you where it's going. I have hypothesis about that. But it used to be about learning history and remembering it and being able to recall it on a test. Why do I need to do that if I can just ask a question and I get it immediately?
Yep.
Like, why education has to fundamentally change? Like, we don't need to do some of those things as much.
I mean, isn't it? I mean, this is an AI tsunami, because not only is education, in the crosshairs of AI's simplicity and access, you have research, financial analysis. I trade every morning, right? I told you I'm a Squawk Box kid, right? When I'm doing my research, I always plug it into AI and give my own parameters, leave tickers out, and I see if AI happens to overlap with what I'm looking at. And then I, input more questions, right? Mm-hmm. It is a conversational tool.
Yeah.
How should a municipality use it?
Well, anytime they're creating anything, an email, a note, poster, they should go to it first before going to a blank document. That's my biggest change. I don't go to a blank. I'll go to a blank spreadsheet because that's a little different. But a blank Word document, anything, all my LinkedIn stuff, that first draft is all in AI. because it just makes it so much easier. The hardest part about writing is starting. It's actually not finishing.
No, I come from the creative world as well, and you and I both know that the hardest part about being a creator, whether it's music or copy or even photo, right, visual, is you have to have the idea.
Exactly.
Right? And the vast majority of people, their brains don't work that way. They go to that blank document or they go to that PowerPoint and they're looking at, oh my God, do I add another tab? I don't have anything on the first tab, but I need to have 2 tabs. They don't know where to go, and that's what AI is doing. It's basically like, I got you. Let me, what are your keywords? Let me give you something to start.
Yeah, and I'd be curious if you have this problem. Like, I'm an idea guy. I've always had ideas. 95% of them are like not very good.
Sure.
But you don't want to spend time running on the bad ideas. So when I put it in AI, like it gives me that draft and then kind of see it like, okay, this was cool, this wasn't. And I've taken ideas that I probably would have thrown away, and they've been real things for me.
Now, I do have a MTV Unplugged theory as it applies to AI and business and the role that AI is playing in helping script emails and everything else, is that the human is still a flawed creature. And a lot of times empathy or connectivity is derived through the imperfect. Hence,
completely agree.
MTV Unplugged, right? We all listen to Nevermind, off the record, but when you listen to Nirvana Unplugged and you hear all the mistakes, all the key misses, etc., you become more of a fan because you're like, that's human, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So talk me through, like, if you're spending 3 or 4 hours a day on AI, I bet I'm at less than 15 minutes. True. I know that number is going to go up, but that's a lot of time. Again, how do you envision pulling and connecting the dots of discovering what is maybe a good brand message, what is a good community message, what is a good municipal message? If the ideas are originating out of AI, at what point does AI have to give you the baton and you have to become a human and sit down and get people to actually put in sweat equity?
Yeah. So I think you made an incredible point there, and I'm going to steal this. We are in the MTV Unplugged era because that's what's going to matter. You can't just be perfect behind the scenes and posting good content. You have to be able to be live. You have to be able to do a podcast.
Yeah.
You have to be able to communicate. A lot of people can't do this. Like, they don't want to, but we're going to have oral exams and less like written online exams than we have. Like, you're going to see that everywhere. In person is going to be so much more important. The pandemic obviously like made that clear to us of what we missed out on. So I think that's one piece. Now I'm going to be honest, I kind of forgot your question. Can you repeat the question?
No, the passing of the baton, like, okay, you get all this, AI is helping expedite it, but at what point do you view like scaling it, getting the human in front of the human to help the other human? And, oh, by the way, I'm going to make sure everybody makes money in this process.
Yeah. Well, so the thing is, the biggest problem we have, and I did a big AI project at my private equity firm and it's a little bit at the consulting firm, but it's adoption. People just don't want to change the way they do things. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing with AI. Like, AI is great at a lot of things and it's lousy at a bunch of other things. AI makes mistakes. You don't want to just get something from AI and submit it. So that's why there's like a change thing. So like, even someone who just gets 5 minutes a day, like from it, like, and uses it for one email, like that's where they got to start. Like, I wasn't using it 3 or 4 hours a day. I was using it like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it just get more and more use cases happen. So I think the other thing is, because of the interface, because it's like natural language where you just type in, like, there's literally unlimited possibility. Not literally, there are a lot of possibilities, and most people haven't found the right ones.
Which app are you using, or do you prefer?
So I'm a multi-model person. I use ChatGPT mostly, but I use Gemini for a lot of like big content creation, like making guides, and I'm very open on LinkedIn that I'm using it, and like it's
sure
a lot of stuff. But I played around with some other ones. The beauty is when you actually do. Are you familiar with Rube Goldberg? You ever heard that?
Yeah, the
You make these like really complicated machines for these simple things.
Correct.
Sometimes I feel like I'm doing that with AI. Like, I'm like pushing together these two or three models and doing things back and forth. And like, it would have been easier to do it very simply, but like it's way more fun, and I'm getting like really weird outputs out of it.
Yeah, no, I mean the Rube Goldberg theory is that through the unnecessary minutia, you become an expert in all of these areas.
Yeah.
Engineering in that particular case, and I agree with you. I think getting into the weeds or the Rube world, so to speak.
Yeah.
AI. I don't think that's a bad thing, and I think anybody listening, you should use multi-platforms. I tend to be ChatGPT basic. I do like messing around with Grok on just kind of Q&A and research, because that's a whole other world. But I haven't tested many of the others at this point. Let me talk about St. Louis in particular.
Yeah. Can I say one more thing on your last point? Because
go ahead.
Like, again, I made a LinkedIn post this morning. It's gotten 726 views. That's not very good. My best posts have had like 3,000 by this point. So why did it not work? I don't know. Something in the content or something with the algorithm, like whatever I did with AI, like didn't hit. And that's what matters more. It's the quality bars just going up. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, to your point of what's going to happen. Like it used to be about just writing and generating because it was hard. Now it's about, okay, we're really head to head on what's the best thing. So sorry, just to wrap up that last part.
No. So I'm going to give back a little bit of info and knowledge. What little knowledge I have, because I'm looking at the post that you're talking about. I believe it was the one best forecast model I ever built. Right?
Yeah, about FP&A, trying to hit with CFOs and things like that.
Yeah. So for me, I saw the post and I didn't understand it, and it took me a while to get into it because the photo itself doesn't. It didn't seem obvious out of the gate to connect. But for LinkedIn in particular, I do a lot of research on LinkedIn posts, et cetera, for clients in my own work. LinkedIn's really simple. LinkedIn does not like you going anywhere else, so it doesn't like hyperlinks, which is the way they all operate.
Yeah.
What it really likes is photo posts that have multiple photos, so that there's a plus number. And it really, really likes when that first paragraph, no more than a sentence and a half, so that whenever it's formatted in search, it is a complete thought, and then there's that ... more.
Yeah.
So as you structure it, it's not even really the content or the copy itself, it's the structure of the copy in the way that it looks on cell phones.
Yes.
Because the majority of people are not on their PCs, a lot of them are, but most people are scrolling LinkedIn and the rest
on the phone.
on their phones. So it's just weird because this is all new knowledge. Mm-hmm. Like none of this stuff has ever existed. And then when you really look at it through the lens of LinkedIn and or X and what they need and want out of it, you start to understand that it's, again, not about the subject matter, but about the presentation and the entertainment.
It's about the hook. Yeah.
It's the hook, right?
As they say. And that's good feedback that you didn't understand it. So the forecast model I'm talking about was for a race, or it was a company called Active Network, which does registration systems for like big races, like marathons and 5Ks. Mm-hmm. But I never called that out. Like no one would. The only people that know that are the ones that worked with me.
Well,
so that's really good feedback. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and the other thing is like along those lines, like within the post, because the AI within LinkedIn and because they're using it to feed the algorithm they feed us.
Yeah,
is that there is no connectivity in runners and the picture.
Yeah.
So anyway,
no, that's good. I'll work that tomorrow. I'm hoping to make a post about doing this podcast. That's
oh my god, it's gonna be awful. It'll probably be your worst performer. And that's
if you
that's
get
all
tagged,
on me.
The thing you didn't mention on LinkedIn is tags. If you get a
huge.
tag and they interact with it, like comment or like, it flies.
Yeah, it's words. It's when they make a comment and or they repost with comment. That's the holy grail. Let's talk about St. Louis PE.
Okay, sounds good.
Maybe a little bit more back into the ground level stuff. You mentioned that St. Louis has a lot of PE value, that it should be a PE destination from an investment perspective. And again, I think you have differentiated between St. Louis being a good location to invest in versus moving here. You don't see them as mutually exclusive. When it comes to St. Louis and the business community here, though, talk about some of the sectors you like. some of the industries that you feel are, maybe trending above the board that nobody knows about, that for a potential listener or an investor, maybe another PE firm, right? If they're like, okay, what does St. Louis have? What would you describe as it having?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of this isn't going to be a secret. And I would say many of the firms in town are going after these businesses, the founder owned, maybe second generation, things that are less susceptible to AI, like manufacturing, logistics, some of the other sort of smaller business, I think you call them the pocket millionaires, some of these people that have these businesses that nobody knows about.
Well, I always hear two industries, laundromats and HVAC.
Oh my God, HVAC. Yeah, we could talk about HVAC for a while.
I don't care what article you read, whether it's Wall Street Journal or Axios, it doesn't matter. If they're talking about small businesses to buy, I guarantee in that article they will mention laundromats and HVAC. So what industries do you like that could be potentially come up in one of your next posts?
I mean, the one I've liked for a while, but frankly, I've never been able to get anybody to work with me on, is senior and senior care.
Okay. Yeah.
So that ecosystem, and that's been a long trend. So the America of 2040 probably looks a lot more like the Japan of 2010 than it does the America of 2025. And we're not having enough babies, and that's not going to change probably. So people are going to get older. A big part of the economy, Medicare, obviously, and then some other pieces. Where are these people going to live? I live on a cul-de-sac. The 6 of the houses are renters of people who are 70 plus. Those, as soon as they're done, probably be gentrified. They'll probably be torn down.
Yeah.
But if they wanted to do that today, where would they live? They probably can't afford. They're paying $1,500 a month in rent or something. So that's going to be a big one. I mean, as I look, I did a lot of research on Missouri in general. We have, it is diverse, and that's one of the things I like. It's not just one sector. You go to Houston, Texas, and oil is 30% of the economy, or so. I don't know the number, but it's a big one. You don't have that in St. Louis. You do have diverse. We have a real economy. You have farmland an hour away.
The only two that are close would be our hospital institutions. Those are mega, and then finance. I mean, Wells, Stiefel, they're all here.
Yeah.
But again, nobody knows. Those of us that are in town and maybe pay attention a little bit, that don't subscribe to the Business Journal but read the headlines, we all know those are big industries, right?
Yeah.
But the senior aging in place, the hospice, home health.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. Yeah.
How do you sell that? Because that's not a sexy industry. It's only sexy to those that want to make money because there is growth market potential that's in there. But, it's not, it's fun to talk about the success, but it's not fun to talk about, I'm making a lot of money off of old people that are dying at higher rates.
Well, you think about it more as I'm giving value to these old people who in the last 15 years of their life need it.
That's glass half full.
No, you're right though. Yeah. And there's a lot of people exploiting, people. Look at all these robocalls and stuff you get that they're looking for that 75-year-old person who's got money, the widow or whatever. It's hard to sell. I mean, you just have to, we just have to look at the trends and say and this is a hot take I have. I think fewer people should work in finance. I would like to see finance become smaller in St. Louis. I would like to see private wealth become smaller in St. Louis. I don't think we need more money managers in this world. Now, funny for me to say I want to start sort of a mini private equity firm, but
I mean, they're all just elevated bookies.
Right. Yeah. They're just making a toll on it. Right. And no offense to them. There's some great ones out there that provide a lot of value through tax advice, but is that positive or negative for the world? I don't know.
Especially when you have ChatGPT that could probably answer the questions for you.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah.
And I'll go back to Prof G.
Yeah.
What his advice to everyone is, don't fuck around. Just get an S&P 500 index fund. Leave it alone. You'll be fine.
That's Warren Buffett's thing.
You're right.
And he's in the industry. I mean, and I think one of the things Scott Galloway talks about is the power of the U.S. corporation. And we need to bring that back. We need to be in more operating businesses. We don't need more consulting firms. And it's funny coming from me, I do consulting work, but I'm doing this to buy or become part of a business. That's really my end goal because I love operating.
Yeah.
I don't like making PowerPoint decks and giving it to somebody and getting $10,000 and walking away. That's not fun for me. Same thing. I wouldn't like getting my 50 basis points on my $2 billion base of clients and having a great life. Like, sure, I can do that, live in Kirkwood, but where's the where's the fun in that, and B, where can I actually help the economy in the community? So I think we need more people to operate those manufacturing businesses and start new ones, or just get in the like actually producing things. And I'm not trying to go with like the whole Trump and American manufacturing. It's America specialty manufacturing. It's not America.
There's a big difference between the narrative on repatriating some of the industries that he was talking about, which I think, based on your body language and what you just said, you agree we do not want those back here.
No, not really.
That there's no value. And the cost of said goods would just it'd be infeasible, really.
Although I will say, like, my wife's company in manufacturing, like, they're getting people saying, hey, we get this from China today. Can you do this for us? And we'll pay more. Like, that's what's happening. Part of that's tariffs, uncertainty. Like,
right, but
it's interesting though.
But what you just said, and we'll pay more. Not we. They will buy it from the manufacturer at a higher rate.
Yeah.
Who will ultimately pay more? That's the downhill.
Well, and who gets the margin, I guess, is like.
Yeah, well, because you and I both know small business, mid-sized business, all businesses at the most part, their margin is the margin. They will never not make the margin. And there's only, the easiest way to attain your margin if things are rough, raise your prices. Find new, clients.
But
the whole idea that we can just simply do that and not affect the consumer, I don't see that. I like what you're saying. Let's be super strategic here. Because the ability to create consulting AI and construction AI more efficient, that's intriguing.
Well, construction is going to be a lot harder. Consulting AI is going to disrupt everything. But I mean, think about the concept of margin. Like, and this is my most communist view. Like, why do we need margin? What if everybody was at break even? Like, why do I need a 10% versus a 40%? You need that because you can grow and invest, and people.
Well, no,
those are more valuable
the reason
businesses.
is what we talked about off mic earlier. It's not tax rates; it's tax policy. Why do you need margin? Because that is taxed at a different rate than your income. And to your point, if we were all break even, well, then we have income earners and we have expenses, right?
Well, you'd pay taxes a different way. You'd pay it to your employees. Like, the money still comes. It is what it is. I'm a big Adam Smith guy, so I agree. Like, the invisible hand moves us, and we do need margin or profit seeking. But at the same time, why do I need a 50% margin business when I could run it at 25 and pay my employees more or something? Like, what? Where's that? Where's it end?
Which would be more Mark Cuban. He's really good at that. When you look at his modeling,
Mark Cuban got
whether or not he does it. Here's what he does. At some point in the life cycle of that job, of that transaction, he goes above and beyond. Could be in wages, real time, all the time, or most cases he is a buyer and a seller. So that whenever he does sell and the money comes in, those are parachute gifts. Well, not parachute. Those are big time numbers.
So Mark Cuban. I actually saw him one time in a bar in Dallas. It was really funny. He's a big guy. He plays basketball with normal people. He's like the most normal billionaire I think you probably ever could meet. But he just got lucky in selling radio on the internet at the right time. Like, literally a year and a half later, he makes $0.
Well, he admits that. He has no qualms in admitting that, his success was largely based upon luck and time.
Well, I think most people's are, but people hold him. So he has all these negative theories about AI that, everybody's gonna be out of work and all this stuff. And people are like, well, it's Mark Cuban. Look at all he's done. And I'm like, well, he did a lot, but he also was just in the right place at the right time. And I think he'd admit that, to what you're saying. So I don't know. But I'm not saying we don't need margin, but again, if we all ran at break even, we could have more jobs. We could have more things. We're so profit-seeking these days that it's led to a lot of negative things, like layoffs and other stuff.
Well, let's rank some of the priorities. Let me just throw a few out. Housing, education, wages.
Number one is jobs. I need every person in St. Louis to wake up every morning and say, I have a purpose today. I'm going to do something with my time. I think too few of us say that and think that.
Okay.
But after that's housing, because you got to have housing. But if you don't have a job with housing, look at Section 8. Some of that you could say has failed. just giving someone a house means you give them like the place that drugs are dealt. Like you don't necessarily give them a better future necessarily.
Yeah, Section 8 is another thing because we dabbled in that, and I know a lot of individuals that are heavy into that. The reality is, for a lot of individuals that are in the real estate market, Section 8 is desirable properties to own based upon cash flow and margin, because you can charge premium to rent in said zip codes with the supplemental.
Oh, with the subsidies from the...
Yeah, so I mean, simple math. You're south side of Chicago. The average, 2-bed, 1-bath apartment is going to run, non-Section 8 at $1,000 a month in the hood. On Section 8, you can get $1,250. I mean, you're looking at significant margins.
Yeah.
Above and beyond. That's all part of the system.
Well, no offense, because I know you're a landowner, but I think we need fewer landlords and more condos, more people that own the space they live in.
I 100% agree with that. In the idea that private equity is buying single family homes in the Kirkwoods of the world tells you all you need to know.
Yeah. I think that was a bit clickbait. That is happening nowhere near the ability or the way people are scaring you about it. That's happening. But private equity is money from firefighters, from policemen. That's the thing. Like when I was helping my companies grow, I was helping like really noble people.
Sure.
Now you don't really hear that. You hear about the Toys R Us and how it failed and a bunch of people lost money, which was bad too. But the firefighters lost money on that one, So private equity just finds the asset class with the highest returns, and they're really good at it. And if it's single family homes, it's single family homes. So
yeah, because they have one job.
Make money.
Make money.
Make money. Make as much as possible. And is that a bad job? Like, what?
But again, that's to your point earlier. Like, at some point, if we do not have more of an integrated, empathetic, at least consideration to employees, to community, to the neighborhoods at large, why even do it?
Exactly.
Because you're on a cul-de-sac, right? So you could go outside and, a couple of years from now, little one will be rolling out on the, the big wheel or whatever they're going to be riding at that point, maybe AI wheel. You can wave at somebody and be like, okay, hey, that's my friend who is also my neighbor. And the only reason they're my friend is because we became neighbors and then figured it out from there. But what we're probably both a little worried about is that success isolation that cuts you off because I'm good.
Yeah.
My business is successful.
Well, and here's where it impacts me in my bubble is I have cameras everywhere in my house. I'm a total security freak. People at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., they drive through these beat down cars. What are they doing?
Yeah.
What are they looking for the package? Are they looking to break? Like, I don't want to assume, but like, that's what keeps me up at night. And, people, I'm not a firearm owner, but that's why people get guns. Like they're worried about that. And even though I'm not part of St. Louis City, it's my problem. Like those things come to me, and maybe they're in Misha Park. I don't know, wherever they are. Like they might not be in St. Louis City, but it's just, sure. And I feel bad even saying this, but like that's just the thing I see, and that's the scary. It is in my backyard, even though largely it isn't.
Yeah, I get it. All right, Alex. I think it's about that time. Now that you are a soon-to-be permanent St. Louis, and because
I'm permanent. I'm not going anywhere.
I know what happens when those Viz girls get involved. Sandwich shop, where you go?
Amaghetti's.
Amaghetti's?
I think, right?
Manchester?
Yeah. Is that the right one to say?
Yeah, we got to get you down in the city.
Okay. I've been to the Hill like once, so I don't. Is that the place to go or?
Well, I have camps. I have sandwich camps.
Okay.
If I'm on the Hill, it's Joya's all day, every day. If I'm down Soulard Benton Park area, you got to go to Blue City.
Okay.
If you're over in the Grove area, it's Gramophone all day long.
Oh, I actually went there last week. Very good. Very good. I got a Philly, I think.
Not too shabby. Pizza, you down with the thin crust Provel?
I buy Provel by the container and I just eat it. I'm not even kidding.
The rope Provel?
I eat the ropes. Yeah, it's weird, but it's
like
like protein is what I tell myself.
Yeah. Well, that's a.
But I do like Emos, but I need probably the better. I need like the inside pizza spot. I don't know what that is yet. I'm a Chicago deep dish guy. You got to think too, so that's a bit different.
Yeah. No. I get it because I love deep dish as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I love thin crust tavern. Oh, it's tavern style.
Yep.
So like St. Louis, like Guido's over on the hill, top of the Sarah's.
Yep.
These are all places. I'll give you a list.
Okay, sounds good.
Now, most important question is beer. What are you drinking? What's in the fridge?
Not as much of a beer drinker, if I'm being honest, but I'm going back home. We're crushing Busch Lights.
Busch Lights. I love it. Busch Lattes. Alex Fabry, I appreciate you joining me, man.
Thank you.
For the listeners, LinkedIn, obviously. Go check it out. Give you a follow.
Yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. I got a little website I'm messing around with at KollerFabry.com, KOLLERFABRY.com. Yeah, here to help. Love to connect. Have a link on my page to anybody who wants 30 minutes. I'll give it to them. So
appreciate it, man. You're welcome back anytime. Ping me.
All right, thank you.
If something pops up, we'll pull Dave and Tony.
Yeah, we should have
Anthony
some more discussions
in a bit, and we'll go from there. Thanks for joining me, man.
Thank you.
All right, we're out of here.
I'm from St. Louis. I got art support. I remember when I first came to school with a fresh pair and I was making moves.